Good afternoon. We're going to wait a couple of seconds to let everyone kind of jump on and make sure their audio and their video is working, and then we'll get started.
Well, we don't want them to join audio or video. We just want
to make sure they can hear.
Make sure they can hear and see us. That's what we want you to do. Okay. Amy, I'll keep monitoring this if you want to get started.
Yes, all right. Good afternoon and welcome to the first webinar in Casio's webinar series on equity in education. As a long-standing member and supporter through scholarships of both Todos and the Benjamin Banneker Association, Casio is proud to partner with them in these important discussions. The title for today's webinar is Black, Indigenous, and Latinx Parents as Intellectual Resources from Optional to Imperative. We are honored to have Dr. Marta Civil and Dr. Maria del Rosario Zavala presenting today from Todos. For the sake of webinar quality, we are keeping everyone muted and all videos turned off except for the presenters. If you have a question or comment, please type in the chat panel and make sure to send it to everyone. The webinar will be recorded and available on Casio Education's YouTube channel and Todos' website. A certificate of attendance will also be available upon request. My name is Amy Chow, and I am the National Training and Product Manager at Casio, and I will be one of the moderators today.
And I am Karen Greenhouse, and I am Casio's spokesperson and a consultant, and I'm also moderating, so I'll be moderating the chat. And both of us are going to be moderating the chat and the live stream, and so if you have any questions, make sure you put them in the chat. And I know the presenters are going to ask you some questions during the presentation, so that's where you would put your answers. Before we begin, I want to just share some ways that Casio is supporting education. We know that the end of last school year was a whirlwind and that this upcoming school year is still up in the air for some of you. So Casio has decided to extend our Casio Cares program and to continue to support educators and students through this uncertain time. So we've extended the free access to our emulator software all the way to the end of the year. It was going to be August, but now it's through December. And we've also extended our free online training through the end of October. Additionally, our always free web-based dynamic math software, ClassPad.net, is extending its free access to its add-on functionality, which is AP Statistics and CAS, and that's going to be through the end of the year as well.
Casio has always provided high quality and affordable technology for everyone. Most recently, Casio released its newest graphing calculator, the FX9750G3, and its free web-based dynamic mathematics software, ClassPad.net, to continue to address the technology access gap and support students, parents, and teachers. To learn more about our calculators or software, visit CasioEducation.com. And now we have Linda Fulmore, the president of Todos, to share Todos' mission statement and introduce our presenters. Linda?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and welcome. Todos is so pleased that you have joined us this afternoon. And I first just want to thank Casio for the great partnership that we've had with them over the years, thanking them for establishing these equity webinars, and especially making sure that Todos was a part of it. You know, the mission of Todos is that we advocate for excellence and equity for all children, but especially Latinx children. And with that in mind, and thinking about how things are so different this year as we start school, Todos was very involved in wanting to help educators as school began. And so we have a new position statement, the movement to prioritize anti-racist mathematics. And with that, we have 4 commentaries. 2 of them are out, and you can find them on our webpage. And our webpage, see it located in the lower left-hand corner. I don't see it, maybe you see it, but it's todos-math-.org, and we would love to have you join our organization. You see their information about our dues, and you can also find that information on the website. And as we go to the next slide, we had to cancel our conference this year, but we do have new dates, June 28th through the 30th. The 28th will be the pre-conference, and then the conference itself will start that night, Monday night, and go for 2 days after that. So please keep going back to our webpage to find more information about the conference. And at this time, it's my honor to introduce our two speakers for this afternoon, two very dynamic women and champions for equity and social justice. Marta Civil is a professor of mathematics education in the Department of Mathematics at the University of Arizona. Her research looks at cultural, social, and language aspects in teaching and learning of mathematics, participation in the mathematics classroom, connections between in-school and out-of-school mathematics, and parental engagement in mathematics. Marta is on the Todos board and chairs its publications and research committee. Maria Zavala is an associate professor at San Francisco State University in mathematics education and bilingual education. Her research focuses on equity issues in the mathematics education of Latino and other historically marginalized populations. She is a director on the Todos board and is the mother of 2 children, ages 6 and 2. So without further notice, we will turn it over to the presenters.
Hey, let me get my screen sharing going.
Thank you, Linda, for this wonderful introduction. And Maria's going to be controlling the slides, and I'll just follow along. We are using closed captioning, which already a disclaimer. I'm going to try not to look at the screen too much because it distracts me. And with my accent, I don't know what's going to happen. So I'll just pretend that it's not there.
Yes, thank you, Marta, for being willing to be uncomfortable and lean into that discomfort. And thank you so much for the introduction, Linda. Marta and I are going to talk to you today about the imperative around centering mathematics education, in particular around the knowledge of Black, Indigenous, and Latinx parents. And let's go ahead and get started. Okay.
So this is a breathing exercise that we all need. So just, look at these images and, I don't know, meditate, breathe, whatever you want. But we do have 2 prompts for reflection for you to write in the chat box, and you can see them there. What do you know about your community's Black, Indigenous, Latinx parents' mathematical knowledge? And what do you know about your community's Black, Indigenous, Latinx parents' mathematical needs? So if you don't mind spending a few minutes writing whatever you want to share in the chat box, and then we'll look at it and maybe comment on some of the statements that you write.
Right, and we're seeing some right away, nothing. Okay. Not much, I'd like to know more.
Okay. I know the parents want the best for their children and want information that will support their children.
I know that parents in my community have a lot of formal and informal mathematical knowledge. Those are really good words for us to start with, because it makes us also think about, like, what do we mean by formal, what do we mean by informal, and who gets to decide? Discomfort with math, feelings like they're not good at math. Yes, a comment that some parents see schools as the experts. Nice. So we're seeing a lot of reflection in the comments about differences in power between schools and Black, Indigenous, and Latinx parents. Some comments about fear, uncertainty, but also about being committed to students wanting their own children to be mathematically proficient. Wonderful. Okay, now that we're in the mind space of thinking about our parents, Marta, you want to tell us what we'll be doing today?
Absolutely. So we're going to address different points, several points. The first one, what are the discourses dominating parental concerns right now? What do we mean by parents as intellectual resources? When do our good intentions go wrong? How do we shift our focus to valuing the home mathematical practices of Black, Indigenous, Latinx, and other traditionally marginalized groups? Lessons from partnering with Latinx parents in Arizona, the MAPS project. And what can you do with this?
Great. So we wanted to start also by acknowledging a few things. First is that Marta and I are both coming from different parts of the United States. I'm in Oakland. I'm on the historical land of the Chochenyo, which was peoples of the Ohlone or the Costanoan people here in California, coastal communities. And in Tucson, Arizona is on the ancestral lands of a variety of Native American groups, including the Tohono O'odham and the Pasquayaqui. And in addition to that, we've also been, all of us, going through a lot. We've had the recent pandemic, of course, hard to ignore, of COVID-19 that's keeping us a lot in our houses. But also I'm blanking. Oh, Ibrahim Kendi, Dr. Ibrahim Kendi has said is our other pandemic in the US of racism. So we wanted to acknowledge that there's actually a lot up in the air right now around schooling, but also a lot of momentum around addressing racism in mathematics education. And so we found that this was a really weird time to be doing a webinar, let's be honest. We wanted to acknowledge that we don't know a lot of what this school year might look like. And around here in particular, there's a lot of questions with school starting next week. And we also wanted to think beyond this coming year. So as we talk today, I'm really hoping that, Marta and I are really hoping that we're thinking both about this coming school year and the recent events that have kind of created this impetus to really, really rethink our relationships with parents, in particular parents from historically marginalized populations, but also to be thinking beyond just this coming year. And so we just wanted to acknowledge that we're kind of in this interesting space right now. Okay, something that has come up from this interesting space is we had interrupted schooling that permeated the end of last year. And in Marta's and my work, we talked a little bit about kind of what are we hearing are the discourses or the things that are kind of being said either between parents or about children, all those kinds of things. And there's two in particular that we wanted to kind of take on head on and let you all know where we come from when we think about working with parents, in particular Latinx, Black, and Indigenous parents. So the first discourse that we want to kind of challenge is this idea that we should be really afraid because children are falling behind, right? And the reality of that, given our current moment, is that children are really actually just exactly where they need to be right now. Let's be honest, we are living through this historical pandemic. And so while there were already inequities in education that are being even brought up more to the surface right now, the COVID-19 pandemic is not necessarily an opportunity for certain kids to get ahead or a time for us to necessarily worry too much that children are falling behind, only because it distracts from the fact that we're all just trying to survive right now, right? So also, in case we needed to hear from a child psychology expert, if that helps us feel a little bit better in our work as parents, the reminder here from Kate Hurley is that children are actually doing okay in some regards. And she reminds us also that even when formal schooling is not fully in session, children are still able to be engaged in learning, and they engage in their own kind of learning on a daily basis, right? Children face a variety of problems each day. These problems vary by age and stage. They have to learn how to step back and evaluate a situation before giving up or becoming hysterical. They have to learn how to think outside the box. And that's something they can learn through the power of play. So there is learning that is happening even while schooling looks different.
Okay, and the other fear that we want to dispel is this idea that, of the fear and the discourse of the uneducated parent. So we hear parents don't know enough to support their kids. But the reality is that parents know enough. They know more than we think that is transferable to supporting in the school math learning. So for a long time, since the early 90s, I've been working with projects with mostly Mexican mothers, Mexican-American mothers. Most of them were mothers, there were some fathers. And this quote that I'm going to read and that you can also read, it's from a mother from the very early 90s when I started doing this work. And we were doing some workshops because the mothers wanted to engage in mathematics explorations. And so she said, I am so happy with all these mathematics workshops because I realized how to help my children understand mathematics in a different way, from a fun approach, all together as a family. That's important, right? So she's commenting on herself as a learning and also together as a family. But then the second part is particularly telling, and also for us, the mothers, because one never knows when we may need or use it. And this way we move forward. And no one is going to mandate that it has to be the way they say, because we also think and solve problems. And that to me is key to what this presentation is about and to my work. Parents know a lot, but we don't give them credit quite often for what they know. Okay. So related closely to this, my colleague Rosie Andrade, who was instrumental in the early 90s in this work that I just quoted, and myself, we came up with this idea of the concept of parents as intellectual resources. And the quote here is one of the definitions, viewing parents as intellectual resources is essential to establishing an authentic dialogue between Latino and Latina parents and schools. This means that schools are genuinely interested in parents' views and understandings of mathematics, and that they want to explore ways for the school's mathematics instruction to reflect parents' knowledge and experiences. So it goes back to this idea that I just said in the previous, with the previous quote, that parents have a lot to offer, they know a lot, and we should basically be in more constant dialogue with them and learning from them.
Yeah, and we're going to take it a little bit also deeper into the power dynamics. So what are we talking about when we say Black, Indigenous, and Latinx parent involvement? So building on the idea of parents as intellectual resources, this is a quote from Ana Ishimaro, Filiberto Barajas Lopez, and Megan Bang's work. We have a link to this article in particular in our resources that we'll share with you at the end. And this is a vision that they put forth in general. When they talk about disciplinary conceptions, they're talking about like disciplines like language arts, mathematics, history, disciplines that we do in school. And they said, we envision a transformation in the role of non-dominant parents and families from constrained and passive supporters in school-centric activities and agendas towards expert collaborators and fellow leaders in expanding disciplinary conceptions and reshaping teaching and learning across multiple contexts. So this is really what we are trying to foreground here, is Black, Indigenous, and Latinx parent involvement beyond the, do you come to school, do you go to events that we invite you to, and instead really repositioning them as partners in the design of instruction, partners in how we think about the discipline of mathematics. And so if there's one thing you leave with today, I really hope it's this idea of expert collaborators and fellow leaders. So just to take it a little bit further, if we are really serious that Black Lives Matter, which we believe we are at Todos, then we have to remember that Black brilliance matters, the brilliance of Black parents, Black students. And so for us, that also means that Black parents' mathematical knowledge matters. And while our session is really about Black, Indigenous, and Latinx parents, in our current political moment, it's really, really important that we recommit to, a centering on Black brilliance and Black lives, because anti-Blackness really informs a lot of the racism that we experience in the United States, right? So we just wanted to make sure that we put that out there, and reminded also that, remind ourselves as educators, as parents, that, the the way that we work with each other means that we have to remember to really listen to our Black colleagues, our Black families, in addition to our Indigenous and Latinx families.
So one of the things that we've uncovered in our work is, as you start listening to parents and also, of course, to teachers, is this possible, this idea of potential conflicts between the parent knowledge and the school knowledge. So for example, here is a quote from a mother, a Mexican immigrant mother, who was actually a teacher in Mexico. And she says, "Last night, my son said to me that school from Mexico was not valued the same as a school here. That is, it doesn't count. What I studied there doesn't count here. He knows that what he studied here is different from what he studied there. And so he says, why would I ask my mom for help if she's not going to know? So there is a barrier." And that to me is something that, I want us to reflect on, because some people might say, well, yeah, that happens with it's generational conflict. It always happens, the parents, the children. But you have to put it into the context of who is this mother, who are these people that we're working with, and whether their knowledge is less valued because of who they are. So for example, we have examples of parents who are engineers, who are, middle upper class, and they don't encounter this kind of conflict. The value of the parents that we work with is not acknowledged. And in fact, this is what happens in the next quote, the one by the teacher. Okay, so this is an example of, a teacher in a 5th grade class, and she commented, "We are teaching division and multiplication, and the children are doing it the way we ask. This Wednesday, when we did it, Eliseo, one of the students, said, 'Oh no, my mama did it different.' And he went to the board and did it that way. And I said, 'Yes, but that's in mama's home. Let's do it the way that we do it in a school.' Now, to clarify, the child didn't quite have the method correct, so he didn't come up with the correct answer. And so, in the benefit of the teacher might have just thought, oh, this is going to be too weird, let's just move around. But the teacher could also have said, this looks very interesting. Maybe your mom can come and maybe she can share that with us and we can learn about the method. But that didn't happen. So that's what I'm saying, that there is this conflict between the parent knowledge and school knowledge that we should basically be addressing in the work that we do.
Muted, sorry. We have a little exercise for us to try together today to build on our communal knowledge here. And this is for us to be thinking about what happens when even good intentions go wrong. So what we have here is, and the idea, let me give the objective a little bit. The idea would be to think about the circles that we run in as teachers, as administrators, as parents even, and think a little bit about how certain kind of talk positions parents as intellectual resources and leaders, and certain kind of talks contains kind of deficit language about parents. So what I've done here is we've just made up, 3 examples of talk we might hear around different parts of school that might potentially be barriers to parent engagement. They're not real quotes, but they might sound really similar to things you have heard. So for example, if you are the teacher rep on site council and you hear somebody bringing up like, well, really what we need to do is help parents learn the math they don't know so they can help their children at home. That might be something we hear. And while it might contain some kernels of truth, it might also be framing parents as not knowing enough or being deficit. A second thing we might hear is maybe you're in a grade level meeting or a department meeting and someone just happens to say, well, the problem is that parents in this school are just not involved. That's something that maybe you've heard before. And the third example related to one of the quotes that Marta shared is that, maybe while you're teaching, a student shares a way of solving a problem that their mother taught them at home. And, your response in the moment might be, that's very cool that your mom showed you this way, but at school we're going to do it the way we learned. So maybe that's not the way we want to phrase it, so that we're sending the signal that parents' knowledge is valued. So what we're going to ask you to do is pick one of these quotes to start with, one of these fake quotes, let me reiterate, to start with. And just think about how you might reframe the concern. If you heard it from someone, how you might reframe the concern. And what would you respond in the moment to the speaker, the person who brings up the concern like this? So if you want to go ahead and you can, pick 1, 2, or 3 and just put your ideas in the chat. And if you wanted to start with the numbers so we kind of know which one you're responding to, that'd be great. So let's take a few minutes to think, respond in the chat. Marta and I will monitor the chat a little bit and bring some thoughts up from the chat.
There's so many entries. It's hard to, it's great, but it's like keeping up.
A lot of people responding, especially to number 2, about problem is that parents just aren't involved. Really nice reframing. Well, what have we done to include them? What do we mean by involved? What are we doing as a school to really involve our parents?
Yeah, for number 3, quite a few of, let's see how your mom did it, or let's try to learn this way, or share the way, or trying to really learn from the method or about the method.
Yes, I like this. When we honor different methods, let's see, Lauren said, this happened to me. This has happened to me. Yes, it's happened to me too, Lauren. I tell kids they can use whichever method works for them. We're going to learn and try a lot of different strategies. Everyone picks what's best for them. And we can even take that concept farther, right? Like we could honor this method. We can make the little poster and put it on the wall. I have the elementary teaching backgrounds. That's the kind of thing I think of. And then maybe we can also have a dedicated number talk day where we compare a couple of methods, right? Like how is the way that your mom showed us how to do it similar or different to this other way, right? I see Susie, you're also bringing up, can we get a group of parents together to discuss how parents can be more involved in the school? Really nice. Trying to look for more responses to number 1 also.
Here, Nora is writing 1 for 1. Do we really know that they don't know the math?
Yes, that is a wonderful question.
Yeah.
Right, because a lot of, except for the exception of number 3, where something actually happened in the classroom, 1 and 2 are based on assumptions we have about parents, right? So I'm really loving seeing all these responses that are about like, what do we really know? How can we really find that out?
Yeah, I think that this is a key message. I mean, we need to basically revisit our assumptions, challenge our assumptions, and don't assume that we know what parents know or don't know, or students. I mean, we're talking about parents, but it would be the same thing with students, obviously.
Thank you, Sabrina, for that thought. We need to meet parents and families where they are, right? And I would also add that like meeting parents and families where they are means asking them like, what do you feel you want to learn more about? But also like, what are your fears for your child? What are you excited about for your child? And kind of expanding that to include both their mathematical expertise and acknowledging that really, our parents are also far more experts on their children than we are as the teachers. Great, so we're gonna go ahead and move on. Keep the good ideas coming. We're gonna go on to our next idea here. So in addition to, is this me, Marta, or is this you? This is me, right?
That's you, or people are mathematical. That's your favorite.
This is my favorite thing to talk about.
Pancakes, it's the pancakes, they're coming.
Yes, the pancakes are coming. Okay, so in addition to really thinking about how our words matter and reframing and raising these questions so we can start to disrupt these barriers, we also wanted to think a little bit about how we hold the mirror up to ourselves. So it's really hard to value the mathematics of other people if you don't see how mathematics exists outside of school, or if you if you haven't really thought a lot about how we disrupt school as being the central location for where mathematics happens. So a starting point that I like to work with my pre-service teachers and just try to do more in my own life is thinking a little bit about how all people do mathematics. So my personal philosophy and stance is I reject the notion that all people can learn mathematics, and instead I start from all people are mathematical, and they will learn more math from there. If the problem is that not everyone's mathematics is valued the same, let's think a little bit about how mathematizing, which basically just is a fancy word that says you see the mathematics in life, how mathematizing is a way that we can start to notice how families that maybe we don't necessarily always think of as being mathematical are actually engaged in daily mathematical practice, and then how we can make that bridge from the mathematics of every day at home and start bringing it into school to disrupt that divide. So what I'm asking you to do in the chat real quick is just take a moment and think about in what ways you yourself are mathematical. So before we go looking at other people, we want to make sure that we've kind of tried this out with ourselves, right? As a way to hone and practice this lens. What have you done today? Think about your day so far, and in what ways have you utilized mathematics? I want to challenge you also, if you have done a lot of mathematizing before, really, really try to think about, is there something I've done today that I don't typically notice mathematics in, and where's the math happening in that? All right. Let's take a moment to just drop a line in the chat of how have you used mathematics today, and really challenge yourself to think of what is a way that I haven't noticed before that I've done mathematics in some activity I've done. What am I noticing about that? Okay, and I'm going to pause to monitor the chat a little bit.
Yeah, I noticed that Kristen wrote scheduling meetings, and that's very interesting because in the work that we did with families over the years with funds of knowledge and home visits, that comes up a lot, not the meetings, but how they budget their day, how they schedule their day, not budget in terms of finances, but because they usually have to juggle multiple things, right? And people quite often don't think about that as being mathematics, but it is mathematics. There's a lot of logic involved in basically juggling different schedules, and yeah. So.
Megan is talking also about the mathematics of potty training. Yes. Yes. Knowing how long it's been since you took your child to the potty is super important during potty training. Braiding my hair, love it.
That's an interesting one. Arrangement of windows on computer screen. It's true. I mean, now that I'm doing, because I'm using two screens, many of us are doing, and how do you arrange them, or what do you have open? What do you move? It's like, planning what to buy at the grocery store. Yeah.
Let's see. So there's a request also, if as you're putting your mathematizing idea, do you think you can name the mathematics that's involved? Thank you, Ho, for making that request.
Yeah, that's true.
You can see if you can name it for yourself. That's always helpful, right? Will the chair I want to purchase fit in the spot I have? Oh, the trials of small housing. I have the same challenges.
Alejandra, I guess when she waters her plants, she estimates the amount of water. Maybe that's why my plants are not doing so well, because I don't estimate anything. I just sometimes put water, sometimes I don't, and that's what happens. In the desert, very intelligent on my part.
Me too, yep. Mowing the lawn most efficiently really matters when it's really hot outside, for example, right? Like calculating that time till you need to get back into the house. Susie, using estimation with money to ensure that you're actually being charged correctly, looks like. Contemplating why my desk is constantly messy. Yes, optimizing space. Estimations of percents of how much of my desk is actually usable versus covered in stuff. Nice. Okay, get the general idea, I think. So a lot of the examples, we're going to go ahead and keep going with the presentation. A lot of great examples. We have just a couple more that we wanted to add in that when we're mathematizing, we can have conversations with each other, we can have conversations with ourselves, and do basically what we're doing here. We're noticing where the mathematics is, and then we're maybe taking it even a little bit further to keep developing our mathematical lenses, right? So for example, my son's favorite breakfast food is pancakes, right? So he will tell me how many he wants, and I might say like, well, how's that different from how many pancakes you should actually eat? We also have sharing that happens a lot in our lives and in the home. This one is a new kind of mathematics, maybe cropping up in a lot of our homes, but related to the old mathematics scheduling. You need to be on Zoom for a certain amount of time, and you have kind of limited bandwidth or devices, figuring out who gets the laptop for how much time, etc. All right, I think we really got it. Okay. Let's move on to
Maps, I believe.
maps. I forgot to delete this slide.
Okay, well then.
Just ignore it. Point being, right, like as we engage in mathematizing, we get that sharpened lens that helps us think a little bit more about like how it's actually a lot of the learning happening at home that can be the anchors into formal math knowledge at school. And so the more we can notice and make those connections, the stronger also we can partner with parents as intellectual resources, because we can be partners in how we design instruction in ways that draw on lived experiences and help support formal mathematical learning that builds on what students know. And these are a bunch of pictures of my family. Okay, here we go. Maps.
All right. So there are a couple of people actually in the participants, at least a couple, who are very familiar with this project. This was an NSF project, NSF funded project in the mid-90s to early 2000s, but the materials are still relevant and they're available for free at that webpage, and we'll give you, the link, the resources. But basically, what I want to underscore about this project is that the idea was to have mathematics workshops for families. Okay, many people have done that, but these were facilitated by teams of parents and teachers and sometimes principals in a leadership team. So this is parents talking to parents and facilitating mathematics with other parents. So I wanted to, emphasize this. And then the other important component is that we had Math for Parents courses. So we have a course on fractions and percents, decimals. We have one on algebra that Nora Ramirez, who is actually one of the participants, developed. We have one of the participants in the webinar, We had one on geometry, we had one on data, and we had one on numbers. So we have 5 Math for Parents courses, 8 sessions each. And then the mathematics workshops, these are they're standalone 2-hour workshops on different topics. MAPS was originally K-12, and we did do a couple of things at the high school level, but they weren't as, popular as the K-8. So the materials that you'll see are mostly K-8, and they're broken down into K-4 and 4-8. So that's, in a nutshell, if you have more questions, I'll be happy to entertain those, Yeah. And so then MAPS also had a very heavy, really research component. And I know that I have Beatriz Quintos attending this webinar, and she was one of the researchers on the project. And so these are some of the things that we learned from the project. Latinx parents, because MAPS was in the Southwest when it started, so it was mostly parents, mostly of Mexican origin. So Latinx parents enjoy doing mathematics and want to learn about the mathematics their children are learning. I'm saying that because you might think, well, this is obvious, right? Well, no, it's not obvious to some people, right? So I want to make sure that we understand that at least the parents that we've worked with, they do enjoy this opportunity and they want to learn. Okay, yeah, next one. Parents are effective facilitators of workshops for other parents. They know the community, they connect with other parents, they can really relate to them. They can bring a more natural way of interacting about mathematics that any of us could if we are not in the community as a parent. Okay. Parents, like everybody else, may have strong beliefs about what is mathematics and about the right way to do things. And in other talks that I've presented, I've talked about the way that division is usually taught in Mexico, and that always comes up. It's different from the standard way, whatever standard means, that we use in this country, in the US. It's different actually from what I learned also. And so they have very strong beliefs about, no, it should be this way. And I'm saying that just to emphasize that we all have beliefs about what mathematics is in the right way. And parents are resourceful. They use their networks for support. So for example, we had many parents in the project for whom English, was not their home language, and sometimes they had difficulty understanding the homework, but they will go and ask neighbors for the assistance. And in the next slide, we're going to see a quote from a mother from Project Maps, Esperanza, go ahead, who basically, she said, she recalled her experience, and the quote is translated from Spanish, but she said, the language has nothing to do with it, because if you are interested in the education of your child, even if you don't know how to speak in English, there should be a person you can approach at school who can help you. You look for a way to get in so that they can help you. This came up in a tertulia, in a get-together that we had with the parents, in which perhaps one of the mothers said something that triggered this comment, something about, well, it's because we don't know English, and she basically challenged it. No, the language has nothing to do with it. You have the resources, go and get them. So that's what I wanted to emphasize with this quote.
Okay. I think you're going to start this one, Marta, and then I was going to jump in.
Yes, we decided that, So these are some ideas about, what schools can do and a short list of actions. So the first one, it's, pretty self-explanatory. Read the research on rethinking parent engagement, and we've suggested some readings at the end of the slides. The second one is related to the work that I was engaged in for many years that then led to this other work, which is the Funds of Knowledge Project for Teaching, in which teachers go into the homes of some of their students' families. Sometimes they can visit all of them, but it's not very feasible, because these visits are very in-depth, and this is not your home visit. And the important thing is that the teacher goes in as a learner. We go to learn from the families. We don't go to tell them what they should be doing or they could be doing. So I want to emphasize that if you are interested in this work, again, contact me, but this is the Funds of Knowledge Project. The third one, it's something that has been very successful in the work that we've done with parents, which is to invite them to visit a math class and then have a conversation about it. And that's where you actually learn also from the beliefs that I was talking about. And you see the parents commenting on, why do they do it this way? What is it that, but you also see what they value, what they pay attention to. And it's a very important learning experience. I highly recommend it. Then there is the hosting workshops. This is a more classical, where parents and children explore mathematics and teachers learn from the parents' approaches. That's what is important. So you have the teachers there observing or participating with them. But again, learning from is not to just, and I'm not, teach the parents how to do things or the children, is to learn from their approaches. And
even to add on to that a little bit. So we've been talking a lot about how distance learning or hybrid learning options may create virtual spaces that definitely come with their own equity issues, but may create virtual spaces for parents to show up in new ways to things like a math festival or workshops. And so it could even be that something like starting with the materials of the Julia Robinson Math Festivals, which a lot have been translated into Spanish, and creating an online environment for that, where parents can share their strategies and teachers and facilitators can witness, listen, be really curious, and be there to learn, would be one way to get started with that in our new kind of distance learning realities. Okay, next few suggestions might be a little bit different, maybe sound familiar to different groups of people here. That is to support parents to facilitate workshops for other parents and community members. So this is something that Marta was also talking about in terms of MAPS. One of the lessons there being that parents are really effective leaders in leading parent learning, right? So thinking about how you provide the support and the space for parents to facilitate workshops for each other. Last few suggestions are things that maybe we already engage in that we really want to reiterate and hit very strongly. To be an advocate for children and families, to question the policies. Why do we do what we do? Why do we do what we do and how we do it? And just like the exercise we did together, to challenge deficit language as you hear it. So to be listening with that ear for how are families getting described in this setting, etc. And then to show that you value home knowledge as an asset in your instruction might also mean that we have to rethink a lot of aspects of teaching and learning. So for example, at Todos, we have a paper that came out on assessment, where we're basically making an argument there for involving parents and families more in assessment processes around mathematics. You can read more about that. Finally, a big one. At Todos, we've been thinking a lot about, it's one thing to take actions and it's another to hold yourself accountable for those actions, right? Or to hold a school system accountable to particular actions. So we wanted to also emphasize the idea that come up with a way, a plan, some kind of methods to be able to hold your school district, your county, whatever your entity is, to be held accountable to these genuine partnerships with Black, Indigenous, and Latinx parents. Okay, our closing thought.
Yes. So this is a quote from a mother in a more recent project. And basically, she was commenting on the relationship with the school. And so she basically says, we are all equal. If you feel that you're equal to them, to the teachers, it's very important for all, because we are all a family. And again, the importance of the notion of family now is extending to, we are a family with the teachers. We are here the whole day. They have our children the whole day. One way or another, we interact with each other. And I think that if we break those barriers, you'll see, I think everything will work better. So it's very sound advice from Carlota, one of the mothers in one of the projects that I had.
Great. So we wanted to end right here and leave this slide up as we take some questions. So what we'd like to do is invite you to post questions in the chat for us, and we have some facilitators here who are going to help us monitor that.
But the cookie was too slimy.
Okay, Alejandro, I'm in the middle of, can you wait 1 second? 1 second. You're right. That's my 6-year-old asking a question. So please go ahead and put your questions there. One question that I did see that I wanted to go ahead and start with, Marta, is somebody asked if you had insights, and I mean, I could share my opinions too, but how do you get started with doing works like maps? Like, how do you get started? My guess is this question is like getting started, like connecting with families and starting to build those relationships.
Yes, that is a very good question. And so basically, you need to know someone who is well connected in the community, right? So when we did maps, obviously, I mean, we worked with the school district, we had the parent liaisons, but I'll be honest, not necessarily in the different sites, that didn't always work very well, right? Because without generalizing, sometimes the people who have the role of parent liaisons in the schools are already so much part of the system that they maybe don't see things from the community point of view. So what helped us is, after a while, is the best resource for us has been, once you get going, which of course you need to get started, and is to have some of the parents actually become those, some of the parents in your own project become the connection to the other parents. You have to have someone in the community, basically. Yes, that would be the best advice that I can give you. Yes.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that, because we know that there's trust issues, right? Like, parents have no reason to trust us out of the blue, so I think that that's really important to talk about that. And Marta, you also reminded me at one point for something else we're doing about Edward Olivos's work.
Yes.
And how he talks about also in some of his more recent work, the need for, if you really want to bring in the bicultural families, and he uses bicultural is his term for, I think, encompassing a lot of families of color, because you negotiate these kinds of dual cultures. He talks about like how some of that may not be able to be done necessarily through the school, and how important it is to have those community-based organization partnerships, because there are certain ways that school as a system might be perceived by parents to not always be in the best interest of their student, right? So we also have to have these hard conversations about kind of like, how do we build those relationships, but also like what maybe our role is sometimes different if we are coming from the school district, and maybe we have to find ways to support the work of community organizing parents who are building up parent capacity to be involved with schools.
Yes, you have to go to where the parents are, that's for sure. And so, for example, it is true that most of my work has been connected to schools, and that has limitations, absolutely. We wanted to do some work, and I know that Kendra is here, with the PIMA, the public library, but then the pandemic came. So I'm still hoping that we can do some work. That's another site, of course, where parents go. But for example, I know of projects that have started in laundromats. So in apartment buildings also, where, you know, they might have like a community room. But the one about the laundromats is the one that I've heard the most about, where you go to a laundromat and you basically, the parents are there waiting for their laundry to be done, and they've engaged with some activities. So that's another place. So you basically going to where parents tend to gather. There's some projects that have partnered. I don't know much about it, but I mean, we wanted to do that when I was in North Carolina with the local grocery stores, where the grocery stores then provide some ideas about how to do math while you are in the grocery store. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think Nora also put the comment in that it's really hard, I think, to not get caught up in like, oh, this would be so helpful if we could just do this with the parents. And to like take that step back and trust that there's a relationship building process, and to ask those questions of like, what do you need from the school? You know, because I think in particular, Black, Latinx, and Indigenous parents are not often asked like, what do you need from the school? They're often told what they think the school needs from them, right? And so really flipping that script around. Somebody also asked if we had examples of how this works with African American or Black parents, and I'm really sad to say that I don't have the research on that. One of the most informative research papers I read is Danny Martin's, when he interviews Black parents. Also, Ebony McGee has co-authored one on undergraduate engineering majors talking about the influence of their parents in their education. So there's a few resources out there, and I'm sorry, it's just not within our expertise to speak to work we have done. But if there are attendees here who would like to put something in the chat, you want to plug some resources, we would definitely welcome that.
I know that Cara Jackson and our colleagues did a project with Black parents, basically building around some of the ideas that we had been doing in MAPS, and they did it, I believe it was with a church, a community, I mean, but I mean, like a meeting room associated to a church, and I visited actually the project once, so that was, you know, a way to reach out also to this particular group of parents in that neighborhood, in that community.
Great, and then I think also, oh, there's another resource coming up from Harold, great. Okay, let's see if there's other questions we can take before we start to wrap up. Yeah, so one has just asked to me like a very, very important question. How do we respectfully engage while we know that families are working hard just to survive day to day, especially now? You know, my thought about that is to not expect fast results, I guess is one way to say it, is like understand it's a process of reaching out. Like Marta was saying, like building those relationships with people who are in the community. So one thing that I know has helped in our area, we're a school district where we have in some schools part-time family coordinator positions. That has helped a little bit because the family coordinator can take on some of the responsibility that the teachers have. But also I think, you know, it's a process. My thinking also is like never close the invitation. The invitation needs to always be open, and then don't make it about ourselves, right? Do the work we can to listen to parents and bring in parents who traditionally have been underserved by our school system. And, you know, don't take it personally if we have to do a whole lot of work, I guess is one way to think about it, you know? Did you want to add anything else to that, Marta?
No, I just put just a comment in chat because I wanted to give the two authors, Cara Jackson and Janine Remillard, are the ones who wrote about the work with African American mothers, and they have a couple of articles. No, there was a question about the pandemic and whether we had seen different opportunities or, from Terry Lamro. What are the opportunities you are seeing during this pandemic? And I don't know, I mean, one thing that I've heard, and maybe Maria, you were, because I was typing, but that I've heard that I didn't think about it, is that of course, now that the kids are learning from home, the parents quite often, particularly with younger children, they're more involved. I mean, more involved in the sense that they're physically involved. They're present because they have to be by the computer or they're checking. And so teachers have commented that they actually have interacted more with parents now than in the past. Now, this is anecdotal, but I mean, anecdotal here that I've heard it from teachers here in Tucson. But I'm wondering about this because that's an interesting point. Because quite often the parents are around where the child is taking attending class. So something to consider, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I have a hard time seeing anything coming out of COVID as an opportunity, but that's just me.
Well, but that's why I was surprised. It had never occurred to me. I mean, I've heard it from different teachers, different schools, saying, I'm interacting more with parents now than I did before. So.
Yeah, and I guess it's also like which parents, like how, I don't know. Yeah. So maybe that is the opportunity, is that virtual spaces might connect with parents in ways that when it's just like, please come to the school building, many parents cannot. In our upcoming Todos paper on technology, we also talk about the virtual version of going to where parents are is to be thinking about the technological spaces that immigrant and other parents might use more than we do in the US. So for example, WhatsApp has come up so much for us, right, as like a space to form parent groups so we can stay connected. And the thing coming up for my parent conversations at my son's school also is just like having those multiple approaches, right? It can't just be the Facebook group. It can't just be the WhatsApp group. It can't just be stuff, the free supply boxes with flyers. It's like you have to kind of be doing all of those things to be forging these connections at a time when we can't just run into each other at the school building. And so there's just a lot more strategizing that we have to do to kind of connect with each other and build community virtually. Yes. Rachel pointed out the Talking Points app. My only concern with Talking Points is it's one-way communication. I think I'm not sure if it can be used differently, but the way that the Talking Points app gets used in my school, for example, is the teacher can send out massive blasts to everybody, but like parents can't necessarily like respond to each other. But it's but it's a helpful way to get information out there for sure. Yes. Okay, so I think we're probably at a point where we need to start wrapping it up.
Just going to interrupt you.
Great. So we just have a couple of things that we wanted to make sure we pointed to, and I will post, before you leave today, I'm going to post the link to our slide deck in the chat so that you can have these links instead of trying to copy anything down. Todos, our website, as Linda pointed out at the very beginning of this webinar, we have a lot of resources. A lot of our resources right now are free. If you'd like to continue to support the development of these resources, things like Todos Live, other webinars, recursos en español también para padres que hablan español. If you please would consider becoming a member, that'd be awesome. I'm not going to go through all these but just so you know that at the very end of the slide deck, we have some links to things we were talking about, some of the resources that we mentioned today. The link for maps is here. And then, as we mentioned, one of our steps that we recommend is to be reading the research on how you break down those barriers and really rethink parental engagement from the point of supporting parents to be leaders. There's a lot of the research here. And these first few articles referenced here are from the MAPS project research, right, Marta? Is that what these ones are? I think so.
Yes. Well, the NCTM research brief is a compilation of ideas from different projects.
All right, that's this
one for sure, and the second one is MAPS, yes.
Yeah. So someone was asking a question of like the outcomes of MAPS. This would be a great place to look and take a look.
Oh yeah, there is much more. If you're interested in MAPS, just contact me. These are actually relatively short articles, that give some ideas. They are not the research articles per se,
Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing just so that I can post the link to our slides in the chat right now. All right, I think our part is done. Yes. Thank you, everybody.
Well, you're posting the links,
Amy,
right?
Amy, you're on mute.
There we go. Thank you, Marta and Maria, for your presentation.
Yes, thank you very much. That was great.
And for giving us ideas and making us think. You know, we use math every day, but then to actually take that time to think about really what kind of mathematics we're using every day is a good idea, definitely, for sure. Thank you, Linda and Todos, for your partnership in this endeavor. And thank you to all of you, those of you who joined us this afternoon. We really hope that you guys picked something up and are able to, you know, maybe incorporate some of these ideas into your school year as we're getting ready to get started again. As a reminder, this webinar has been recorded and will be available on Casio Education's YouTube channel, as well as on Todos's website. You will see the link here. And then a certificate of attendance is available if you send us an email at calctraining@casio.com. Be sure to join us next week on August 12th as we continue this conversation on equity in education with Olga Torres. And if there aren't any other?
Well, they're going to get a follow-up email where I will attach the slide deck and the links from Mark.
We'll do that as well.
Okay.
All right.
So thank you.
Thank
everyone.
you guys. Hope to see you guys next week.
Yep. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.